Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. A convoy of US Army cars is transporting a very important person in Afghanistan. The man is Tony Stark, a globally famous billionaire known for his military arms manufacturing company. The soldiers are happy to have him there and even try to take pictures with him, but they are attacked and one of the cars explodes. The soldiers get out to fight back, but they are all killed. Tony exits the car, hides, and tries to call for help, but one of his own weapons falls beside him and explodes. The bomb doesn't kill him, but the shrapnel from it penetrates the vest he's wearing, and he starts bleeding and faints. Tony later wakes up surrounded by terrorists, the same ones who attacked him, and they send a message to someone. It is remembered that the day before, at a ceremony, the story of Tony is told, a genius inventor from a young age. He and his father were always united in science and the company, but unfortunately, his father died. To take his place, Stain comes into the picture to help with the Stark Company. However, when Tony is ready to assume the company, he returns and takes Stain's place, making his arms manufacturing company grow globally. At this ceremony, a soldier named Jim, Tony's friend, represents the Stark Company to present an award to the celebrity, but the attraction is not there, so Stain receives the award on behalf of Tony. Soon, we see Tony having fun and playing in the casino, and after that, he heads back to the car when a beautiful reporter named Christine questions him about his weapons and the so-called peace among nations. Tony responds by saying that his father used to say that if they wanted peace, they should have a weapon more powerful than the enemy. He ends up seducing Christine, and they have an eventful night. At dawn, Christine wakes up at Tony's house in Malibu. Christine takes a tour of the house and meets Pepper, Tony's secretary, who gives her new clothes before she leaves. Meanwhile, Tony is in his garage customizing his car, with the help of his artificial intelligence called Jarvis, which acts as Tony's assistant, executing all systems determined by Tony. Pepper talks to him about the agendas he needs to fulfill and thanks him for the gift he gave her. Tony takes his car and quickly heads to his plane, not caring about the delay, and he races with his driver named Hogan. They travel to a US airbase in Afghanistan, with the objective of showcasing the power of Stark Industries' weapons. Tony gives a demonstration by firing a missile with a tremendously destructive power, causing massive shockwaves in the air. After the demonstration, Tony drinks a bit and receives a call from Stain, who cares about how things are going. Afterward, he returns to the base, but the attack against him takes place, and we return to him receiving medical care and something being placed in his chest. Tony later wakes up and realizes there's a man there, a doctor named Ensign. Tony quickly realizes that there's something in his chest that's receiving electricity. Moments later, Tony, observing what's in his chest, asks Ensign what it is, and the doctor says it's an electromagnet, the only thing keeping Tony alive. However, they couldn't remove all the shrapnel, and many fragments are still threatening to reach his heart, but the equipment doesn't allow it to happen. They are in a prison inside a cave, and soon one of the terrorists arrives, showing some satisfaction for having Tony Stark in their hands, considering him the greatest killer in America. However, their objective in having Tony there is for him to build a powerful missile for them. Tony refuses, and he is punished for it. Afterward, he is taken outside the cave and sees various missile parts with his company's logo. The terrorist asks Tony for a list of what he would need to do what they want. Afterward, they would set them free, but Tony, knowing that in the end they would die, still shows acceptance of the deal. Tony then starts doing something, asking them to bring everything he requests inside the cave. Time passes, Tony starts dismantling some of his non-functioning missiles, planning to do something, even with the terrorists' eyes fixed on them. Ensign offers to help Tony with what he's doing, and Tony, being a very intelligent guy, guides his companion on what to do. Later, after much work, Tony shows what they have been doing, a mini arc reactor, which is a great source of energy that will serve to keep the shrapnel away from his heart. However, Tony says that there is another purpose for the creation and shows Ensign what they will do, a large metallic suit that will be powered by the reactor. Time passes, and the two work on parts of the project without arousing suspicion from the terrorists. However, their leader named Raza, who is watching the footage, notices something strange and decides to take a closer look. He confronts the two, and knowing that they are wasting time in producing the weapon he wants, he threatens Ensign. Tony, not wanting any harm to come to his new friend, says that he needs him to finish their project. The leader says they now have only one day to finish, so Tony hurries and, after much effort, manages to complete the armor. Ensign helps him put on the armor, and in the meantime, the terrorists search for Tony on the cameras, but not finding him, they go there to see what they were hiding. However, when they open the door, they are blown up by a bomb that Tony and the doctor installed there. Tony then asks Ensign to initiate the activation of the armor, but the process is slow, and the terrorists are on their way. Wanting to buy time for Tony, Ensign grabs one of the guns and goes out to fend off the enemies. Unfortunately, further ahead, he is surrounded by everyone and has no way out. The armor manages to be activated, and when the men arrive to search for Tony, they are surprised by him, who now possesses a large metallic suit. Bullets do no harm to the armor, which also grants Tony great strength to kill his enemies. Tony reaches the exit and finds Ensign injured, but he is almost hit by a grenade launcher. However, prepared, he retaliates and leaves Raza buried. He goes to his friend, who is severely injured, and bids farewell, telling Tony not to waste the life he has, and then dies. Angered by the loss, Tony goes out and attacks his enemies with flamethrowers, also taking the opportunity to destroy his company's equipment. He is attacked, and with little time of strength left in the armor, he activates a missile booster in his suit and launches himself away from the place before everything explodes. He lands further in the desert, and the armor shatters completely. Tony, now drifting in the scorching desert, walks for a while until the soldiers find him. Jim, his friend, comes to his rescue and takes him home. Back in Malibu, Pepper and Hogan are there to welcome him, relieved that Tony is still alive. Inside the car, he asks Pepper to schedule a press conference. Back at Stark Industries, everyone welcomes him, but he goes straight to the press. Meanwhile, Agent Phil, from S.H.I.E.L.D. wishes to schedule an interview with Tony to learn more about his escape. Returning to Tony, he begins to speak about what he witnessed, young people being killed by weapons he himself designed, and he feels guilty about it. That's why he decides to shut down and stop the production of Stark International weaponry. Everyone is surprised by this decision, and Stain interrupts him. Later, the two of them talk by the arc reactor, and Stain questions him about this decision because what they do is manufacture weapons. But Tony says that what he saw made him realize that they can do better and they can use the arc reactor, stating that his technology actually works and is for the greater good. Stain, after seeing the technology in Stark's chest, gets excited about what the company can generate and accepts Tony's choice. Later, Tony asks for Pepper's help to replace the reactor in his chest. She assists him but doesn't want to do it again. However, Tony shows gratitude, saying that she is the only person he can trust. Afterward, Tony begins his new project with Jarvis' help since he doesn't trust anyone and doesn't want it to fall into the wrong hands. Meanwhile, in the desert where Tony crashed, the terrorists recover parts of the armor Tony created. In Tony's garage, he starts assembling his projects, which appear to be a type of mechanical boots. He tests them, but things don't go as planned at first. Then he moves on to creating robotic arms with a power source in the palm of the hand, which turns out to be quite dangerous. Later, by combining the pieces of the prototypes and using only 1% of the power from the reactor in his chest, he manages to lift off the ground and fly a bit around the garage. After successfully passing this test, he proceeds to build a complete armor, this time more sophisticated, with Jarvis as his flight assistant. We see a silver-colored technological suit, called Mark II, and then he goes out to test his new toy with a longer flight in the city's airspace. Tony decides to test the armor's capability and see how high it can reach. He pushes the suit to a high altitude, causing it to shut down and freeze, starting to fall. Luckily, Tony manages to regain control and Jarvis reactivates the suit before they hit the ground. Tony returns home but accidentally destroys the roof and crashes into the garage on top of one of his cars. After recovering from the adrenaline rush, he sees a present on the table given by Pepper and discovers that it's his old reactor that she didn't throw away. Later, while analyzing the test data, Tony instructs Jarvis to remake the armor with a titanium and gold alloy. Jarvis begins recreating the model, and the appearance of the suit takes shape, with a red color and some golden parts. While Jarvis works on this masterpiece, Tony attends a celebration at his company. However, Stain appears uncomfortable with Tony's presence, but Tony enters anyway. Inside, Agent Phil tries to talk to Tony, but upon seeing the well-dressed Pepper, he is attracted to his beautiful assistant and approaches her. They dance a bit and become closer, but Pepper doesn't seem comfortable with them being together. However, a romance seems to be blossoming between them, and they almost kiss. Tony goes to get something to drink, but Christine approaches him as an investigative reporter and shows him some photos where his weapons are in the hands of terrorists, who have already attacked several cities. Surprised, Tony denies authorizing these weapon shipments and later confronts Stain about the photos. Stain becomes uncomfortable with Tony's questions and ultimately admits that he was the one who had Tony removed from the company. Back at home, Tony watches the news, which shows the terror brought upon the population by the terrorists known as the 10 Rings, who are using Stark weapons. Determined to do something, Tony enhances his suit to turn it into a combat weapon, Mark III, and even more advanced and powerful armor. Meanwhile, the terrorist attacks continue, and they kill many innocent people. Moments later, as they prepare to eliminate a family man, the Mark III armor arrives and starts attacking the men who were causing panic, quickly eliminating 4 of them. However, when he is about to shoot the rest, the terrorists threaten to kill the villagers by pointing their guns at them. Using his powerful suit and artificial intelligence, Tony manages to precisely target only the terrorists and easily eliminate them all, thus saving the parents, children, and the entire population from the evil that was massacring them. Later, he goes to another village where his weapons are stored but is hit by a tank and crashes to the ground. Fortunately, Tony has a highly resistant armor equipped with a set of small yet highly destructive weapons. He easily destroys the tank and then flies away. Meanwhile, the military, observing the area, notices something in the airspace and wonders who authorized flight over there. Jim is called to analyze the situation, unaware that it's Tony in his armor. However, suspecting Tony's involvement, Jim calls him to inquire if he has any drones or equipment flying in the area, but Tony lies, saying he doesn't. 2 fighter jets are dispatched and quickly catch up to the armor. Tony starts evading them at hypersonic speed, with the jets in pursuit. He narrowly avoids a missile but manages to escape and elude the jets, disappearing from their radar. Tony calls Jim again to tell him that he's the one being pursued. The pilots spot him underneath their jet and become frightened, trying to maneuver to detach the armor from him. Tony is thrown away and crashes into the other jet, destroying it. The aircraft starts to fall, and the pilot ejects himself. However, as he descends rapidly, he fails to activate his jammed parachute. Luckily, Tony reaches him and helps him, then swiftly flees the scene, instructing Jim to report to the press that it was just a simulated army test. Back at home, Tony is removing his armor when Pepper sees him and discovers what her boss is up to. Seeing bullet marks on the armor, she becomes worried about Tony's actions. In Afghanistan, the terrorist Raza meets with Stain, who is the financier behind everything and the true mastermind behind Tony's death. However, Raza is there to see something else, the armor Tony created to escape from them. The terrorist discusses with Stain, trying to make a deal to obtain more of those armors, but Stain refuses to share the power and activates a technology that paralyzes Raza. He then goes outside, where his soldiers have taken control of everyone, giving the order to take everything and then eliminate all the terrorists. At home, Tony asks Pepper to go to his office at the company and hack into the server to download files. He wants to learn more about the plans being made behind his back and seek revenge against those who took advantage of him. Pepper is hesitant to help him, fearing that what he is doing might get him killed. However, Tony convinces her by saying that if he were meant to be dead, he would already be, and therefore believes that what he's doing is the right thing. Pepper goes to Tony's office, accesses the company server, and starts downloading the data. The files include weapons, robotics projects, and videos of Tony's abduction, which the terrorists sent to Stain, demanding a higher ransom to kill Tony Stark. Pepper begins uploading the files to a flash drive when Stain enters the room. She becomes frightened but manages to discreetly remove the flash drive and starts to leave as Stain checks Tony's computer and discovers that files have been downloaded. He starts searching for Pepper. Fortunately, she calls Agent Phil to accompany her, as he had been waiting for her to conduct an interview with Tony. This serves as an escape plan for her. Afterward, Stain confronts the scientists, and one of them admits they couldn't recreate what he asked for, an arc reactor. Stain becomes furious because only Tony knows how to recreate such technology. Later that night, Tony, alone at home, receives a call from Pepper. However, Stain sneaks in and uses the paralyzing technology on him. He reveals that he ordered Tony's assassination, removes the reactor from Tony's chest, and leaves him on the brink of death. Worried that Tony hasn't answered her calls, Pepper contacts Jim and informs him about Stain's plot, urging them to hurry to Tony's location. Moments later, Tony, still alive but weakened, goes to his garage and tries to reach the old arc reactor that Pepper left as a gift for him. However, his vitality is fading, and without strength, Tony cannot reach the technology. Fortunately, his robotic project with artificial intelligence assists him, giving him another chance. Later, Jim finds him and informs Tony that Pepper went to apprehend Stain. However, Tony knows it won't be enough. Meanwhile, Stain is connecting the reactor to his prototype armor. Pepper, accompanied by a few agents, arrives at Stark Industries complex and heads to the area where Stain is. Meanwhile, Tony re-equips himself with his armor and shows Jim what he has. The agents enter the room and search for Stain, but only find Tony's old armor, which he had built in the cave. However, they soon discover that the real weapon is behind them, a massive metal armor that immediately attacks the agents, killing them and nearly capturing Pepper. She tries to call Tony and warn him about the danger Stain has become, but Pepper is surrounded outside and threatened by the weapons of Stain's suit. Fortunately, Tony arrives and launches a full-scale attack, throwing Stain out of the complex and causing panic on the streets. Stain grabs a car with a family inside, but Tony manages to save them. However, Stain doesn't stop and begins to destroy everything, attempting to crush Tony's armor and declaring that he will destroy him. He throws Tony into cars and uses the weaponry integrated into his armor. Tony is fine and realizes that Stain has made upgrades and can also fly. Even with only 19% power remaining in his suit, Tony orders Jarvis to ascend as high as possible. Stain follows him with great determination and grabs him, but Tony, knowing that his enemy was not designed for such heights, manages to freeze and disable Stain's armor, causing it to fall without power. Tony returns to the ground with only 2% power. However, Stain survives and attacks him once again. He squeezes Tony's armor, almost destroying it, but Tony manages to free himself using small bombs. Tony instructs Pepper to charge the Stark reactor, while he continues to attack Stain. However, he is overpowered by his enemy, who tears off his helmet, crushes it, and then shoots at him, leaving him suspended above the reactor. Tony tells Pepper to press the button, causing the reactor to release a massive surge of energy. Tony escapes the electrical wave, but Stain is electrocuted and then falls into the reactor, which subsequently explodes, killing Stain. The next day, Jim addresses the press, justifying the events and concealing the true reality of what happened. Tony reads a newspaper article about a certain Iron Man and prepares to make a statement. Phil arrives and hands him some papers to read, including his alibi stating that Tony was not in the city the previous night. Regarding Stain, Tony had taken care of that as well, fabricating a plane accident while he was on vacation. When Tony is about to make his announcement, he pauses for a moment and decides not to read the papers. Instead, he declares to everyone that he is Iron Man. The film concludes by showing us that one night in Tony's house, Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., speaks to him about not being the only superhero and introduces the Avengers Initiative project.